Hello again. Thank you again for watching my channel. This is It Is Finished Ministries. My name is Ursulon Cockrell. Today I've got an exciting message for you today about the new heaven and new earth. There are a lot of misconceptions about what the new heaven and new earth are. As someone who just left the Seventh-day Adventist Church, their belief is that God will physically recreate a new heaven and new earth. The earth that we currently live on will be wiped away, and God will start completely over with a new heaven and a new earth. And I can tell you that that is not, when we study the context, that is not what is being described here. And context is key. We cannot read our 21st century mindset into scriptures. We have to let the Bible interpret itself and use the language that the Bible writers used. So, point number one, we're going to be looking at Isaiah chapter 65, and point number one is, in contrast to the new heaven and new earth, is actually related to two different groups of people. That is Israel and the Gentiles. In verses 1 and 2 we read, I am sought of them that asked not for me. I am found of them that sought me not. I said, behold me, unto a nation that was not called by my name. I have spread out my hands all the day unto a rebellious people that walks in a way that was not good after their own thoughts. And in Romans chapter 10, Paul is describing two groups of people, Israel and the Gentiles. And he actually quotes from these two verses, showing us the fulfillment of these two verses. Is one is the Gentiles who would be found even though they were not searching for God. God would find them, and they would not even call for God, but he would answer them. This is in contrast to Israel, the Jews, who were a disobedient and gainsaying people, who refused the call. Verse chapter 5 of Isaiah 65 goes on to describe their condition. He says, which say, stand by yourself, come not near me, for I am holier than you. In Luke chapter 18, Jesus is describing a Pharisee and a publican who go up into the temple to pray. And he says there that the Pharisee actually stands and prayed with himself. God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, adulterers, unjust, or even as this publican. This was a picture of the fulfillment of Isaiah 65, where this Pharisee, believing he was more holy than all the other surrounding nations, than the Gentiles. Point number two, because of this disobedience, God would number them to the sword, because when he called, they would not answer. And so in Isaiah 65 verse 12, we read, therefore I will number you to the sword. You shall all bow down to the slaughter, because when I called, you did not answer. When I spake, you did not hear, but did evil before my eyes, and did choose that wherein I delighted not. And so, because of their disobedience, God would send them to the slaughter, number them to the sword. We read about this in Luke 21, verse 24, when Jesus is describing the fall of Jerusalem. He says that they shall fall by the edge of the sword, be led away captive into all nations. Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And so this fulfillment came in 70 AD, with the conquest of Jerusalem at the hands of the Roman army. In Matthew 22, Jesus goes on to describe a parable of a wedding feast that the father is holding for his son. And he says that he sent servants to these people to invite them to the wedding, but when he called, they did not come. This was a picture of Israel who refused that call. And as a result, he goes and burns up the city, and then he sends out his servants into the highways and byways to call more people to the wedding. This was that picture of the gospel going forth out into all nations. Point number three, the new heaven and new earth is synonymously described as the creation of a new Jerusalem. In verses 17 and 18 of Isaiah 65, we read, for behold, I create new heavens and a new earth. The former shall not be remembered, nor come into mind, but be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem, a rejoicing, in her people a joy. And so this form of Hebrew poetry is called synonymous parallelism, wherein the first verse, in verse 17, he says, I create a new heaven and new earth. In verse 18, he goes on to say, I create Jerusalem. Paul described these two Jerusalems in Galatians 4. On the one hand, he says one is Hagar, which is in bondage to her children. This was a picture of Israel in the flesh, as he calls them. Then he goes on to describe a second Jerusalem, which is above and is free, referring there again to the remnant of Israel and the Gentiles who would be saved by faith in Christ. So these are the two Jerusalems, these two groups of people, these two old heaven, old earth, new heaven, new earth. Point number four tells us there is sin and death in the new heaven and new earth. In Isaiah 65 verse 20 we read, there shall no more there be in infant days, nor an old man that hath not fulfilled his days, for the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner being 100 years old shall be accursed. In the New Testament, Jesus repeatedly refers to his people as little children. He even says, you must become as a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven. In 1 John, John calls his people little children repeatedly. And so this is a constant theme where the people of God must become as children of God to enter into the kingdom. And so that's what this verse is referring to. The child will live a long, full life, will die 100 years old because we are the children of God. The sinner there will die and be accursed. And so we see there is sin and death in the new heaven and new earth. Adventists have tried very fanciful ways to get around this verse, and none really measure up because they don't understand the context and the reality that is present here and now of the new heaven and new earth. Point number 4. This new group of people in the new heaven and new earth would no longer be subject to the covenantal curses, whereby they are uprooted from their land by another nation. Now, that's not to say that hardships do not happen in this life, but it won't be because they have broken the covenant. Under this new covenant in Christ, it will not be breakable. We have faith in him. This is unlike the old covenant. Under the old covenant, in Deuteronomy 28, God is telling them, his people, for breaking the covenant, they would take a wife, but someone else would come in and take their wife. They would build a house, but they would not be inhabited. They would plant a vineyard, but they would not be able to enjoy the fruit thereof. In verse 33, he says, the fruit of your land and all your labor shall a nation which you know not eat up, and you shall be only oppressed and crushed away. So this was describing a nation coming in, uprooting this people, taking their houses, taking their vineyard. In the new heaven and new earth, we're told this will not happen. In Isaiah 65, verse 21 and 22, he says, they shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Because this is a spiritual reality fulfilled. We are a spiritual people, a spiritual priesthood living in a spiritual temple. So no one can come in and take this from us because this is a spiritual reality we enjoy. The spiritual temple here is the church. No one can come in and swoop this house away. So that's what this is describing here. And verse 24 really rounds out the context for us because it takes us back to verse 1, where this is a new group of people, the Gentiles and the remnant of Israel, who before they called, God would answer them. Isaiah 65:24 says, and it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer. And while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Again, this takes us right back to chapter 65, verse 1, where he says, I am sought of them that asked not for me. I am found of them that sought me not. And so we see this perfect harmony here where the new heaven and new earth is describing a new people in a new faith, a new spiritual temple, a spiritual priesthood, where little children, the church of God, the people of God, live a long life, 100 years old, and they die fulfilling their days. Again, this is a spiritual reality, so don't get too tripped up on the physical things here. The spiritual realities are what we find in Christ, and that is what the new heaven and new earth is describing here. It has nothing to do with the physical recreation of this earth and the new heavens. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. Look forward to giving more information on this next time. Thank you and God bless.